So we know that women are affected more by osteoarthritis than men, and it's estimated that women are about 40% more likely to develop osteoarthritis of the knee and about 10% more likely to develop osteoarthritis of the hip than men. So in recent years, researchers and scientists have spent some time looking into whether there is a direct link between these hormonal changes that occur during menopause and cartilage health related to osteoarthritis. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at what the current evidence tells us, and we're also going to have a chat about some of the factors that could be at play that make women at a more increased risk of developing osteoarthritis. We now know that osteoarthritis is far more complex than this mechanical notion of wear and tear. There's many different factors that can make joint pain better or worse, and actually the more we learn about the condition, the more complex we think it is. The current thought process is that it has a lot to do with our metabolic system and the way our body breaks down food. And one of the key factors to do with osteoarthritis is this chronic low-level inflammation that many of us have in our systems. So including this metabolic system and the inflammatory system, people are also wondering whether the hormonal system and endocrine system has a role to play in the condition as well. So if we talk about some of the hormones that change during menopause, the most common one that we're probably aware of is estrogen. So estrogen levels drop post-menopause. Now, estrogen is a really important hormone for bone remodeling and bone regeneration. And what happens during menopause is as the levels of estrogen drop, the rates of bone remodeling on the surface of the articular plates increases, and this is something that we do see closely associated with osteoarthritis. Progesterone is another hormone that changes during menopause too, and this hormone is a really important one at trying to suppress the pro-inflammatory cytokines, these inflammatory chemicals that tend to increase the amount of arthritis that we could potentially have in our joints. So as the progesterone decreases, our ability to control this low-level inflammation that sits in the synovial fluid, that lubrication in the joint, also decreases. And there is a hypothesis that this could increase the amount of inflammation within the joint capsule. Testosterone is also another important hormone when it comes to menopause. It decreases during and after menopause, and it's also associated with helping to suppress these inflammatory chemicals within our system. It's also suggested that it has a role to play in pain sensitivity. So as testosterone levels decrease, our levels of pain sensitivity tend to increase. So let's have a chat about some of the research. So a 2017 study compared men and women of a similar age and the effect of these changes in their sex hormones to the health of their cartilage. And in the male population, they found that these changes in sex hormones had no real effect on their cartilage volume, cartilage defects, bone marrow lesions, or the amount of swelling that they had within their knee joint. However, findings were slightly different in the female population. In the female participants, they found that those that had higher levels of progesterone in their system had higher cartilage volume, and they also found that those that had lower sex hormones had a higher risk of joint swelling and synovitis. Those female participants that were on estradiol, which is a sex hormone replacement medication, had fewer bone marrow lesions on their joint surfaces. However, there was a further study in 2018 and another study in 2011 that concluded it was very difficult at this stage to 100% say there is a direct link between these hormonal changes and the development of osteoarthritis. So it's probably fair to say at the moment the evidence is slightly inconclusive, but we think there could be a link. The other thing to say is we know that there's many different symptoms that unfortunately we get during menopause that could either increases our chances of developing musculoskeletal pain and also have an effect on our joint health. So let's have a chat about some of those right now. One process that happens to all of us from the age of 30 is this process called sarcopenia. And this is basically the principle that as we get older, our muscles get weaker. Now, we know that estrogen is really important for muscle strength and muscle health and all soft tissues, tendons and ligaments as well. And that if we have deconditioning or atrophy around a joint, then that is going to increase the likelihood of getting arthritis. And one of the main treatments for osteoarthritis is trying to get the muscles stronger to stabilize the joint better and offload the pressure going through the articular surfaces. Now, sarcopenia also leads us on to another really important point as well. Now, in order for muscles to function and work properly, they need energy. And this is how metabolism works. We consume nutrition, the nutrition gets stored as energy, and then our muscles can do their job properly. But if we have smaller muscles or the muscle mass size is decreased, then those muscles require less energy. And if we keep consuming the same nutritional calories that we were before, the excess energy that we're not using is going to get stored as fat. And we know that there is a positive correlation between the amount of visceral fat that we have within our body and osteoarthritis. The location of our body fat also changes. So pre-menopause, it's more located around the breasts, buttocks and thighs. And after menopause, it is more located around the abdomen. And the figures suggest that we have around 5 to 8% of visceral fat pre-menopause and around 15 to 20% of visceral fat post-menopause. And it's this visceral fat that is the problem when it comes to osteoarthritis, because we now know and assume that being overweight or obese is a state of chronic low-level inflammation. So if we do put on weight during menopause, the chances of having more inflammation in our system do increase, and this is not great news for joint health. Another symptom unfortunately associated with menopause is poor sleep. So sleep deprivation is really common, whether it's not being able to get off to sleep initially, waking up in the night, or having night sweats. All of these things are quite common. But we know that prolonged periods of sleep deprivation do lead to increased blood markers for inflammation. So things like interleukin-6, C-reactive protein, and inflammatory cytokines are all associated with sleep deprivation. Lastly, we also know that these hormonal changes can affect our mood and mental health, and this can lead to a cascade of lots of different issues. So it is associated with increases in inflammation once again, but more generally and socially, it's going to make us less likely to want to go out, less likely to sleep better, less likely to eat well, and less likely to partake in regular physical activity, which is something that we know is really helpful for joint health. So with all of these things in mind, yes, they don't sound all that positive, but there certainly are lots of different things that you can do at home to try and manage these symptoms a little bit better. Now, there is one thing that is going to help to combat all of the things that we have discussed today in one hit, and that is exercise. So there's nothing that we've spoken about today that exercise won't help with. So if we partake in some regular resistance or strengthening exercise, we can slow down the process of our muscles and bones getting weaker. If we want to do some weight bearing or bone loading exercise, that's going to help our bone strength in the same way that lifting weights is going to help our muscle strength. Both of those things are going to use more energy and burn more calories and make it less likely that we put on weight. Any exercise that we complete is going to release endorphins, these happy hormones that make us feel better, and even more so, when we exercise, we release anti-inflammatory chemicals within our system. That's right, we have natural anti-inflammatories within our system that only get released when we exercise. So that's going to be a great way of reducing inflammation and improving pain if we have some. We also need to take into account the other systems in our body as well. So our respiratory system, our cardiovascular system, our gastrointestinal system. All of these systems need exercise and activity to function properly as well. And they are going to be at risk of slight regression if we see a gradual deterioration in the amount of exercise and movement we do during our menopausal years. Now, if you do need some help to get moving, or you need a little bit of help from an exercise point of view, there are a number of different workouts specifically for joint pain and osteoarthritis on the Genuine Physio YouTube channel. So head over, check them out, and I really hope they help.